In the top stories, police investigating shooting in NEVIS, sex offenders registry to be established in Grenada, and death toll rises in Germany flooding. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Friday, the 16th of July, 2021. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, the police in NEVIS are investigating a shooting incident which occurred on Thursday. According to a police source, investigations are still underway, so the details are unclear. However, the police have confirmed that the shooting took place in the Gingerland area on Thursday evening. We'll have more information as it becomes available. As the National Emergency Management Agency continues its awareness campaign for the 2021 hurricane season, nationals are being reminded that persons can now have access to a hurricane shelter before a storm hits, a change in policy made a few years ago. During the July 14 edition of Working for You, Deputy National Disaster Coordinator Claricia Langley-Stevens explained that the National Emergency Management Agency recognized that the model of opening shelters before the impact of a storm worked better.
The Mitigation Council agreed to activate 8 primary shelters on St. Kitts to be able to receive persons who may feel disadvantaged. Because bearing in mind that we were actually looking at being affected by a Category 5 hurricane, and so those were circumstances that allowed for us to move away from opening after, because you wanted persons to do everything in their power to be safe and preserve life, because the preservation of life and safety comes first in all of our efforts at the agency.
There are no prerequisites to be admitted to the shelters as they're open to the public. However, upon arrival at a shelter, an application form must be completed. The 2020 approved shelters list is in place. However, the 2021 listing is before the Cabinet to be approved, with some shelters being removed and newer ones being added. Workers in St. Kitts and Nevis are strongly encouraged to make regular contact with officials at the St. Christopher and Nevis Social Security Board to ensure that their employee contributions are up to date. This advice was shared by Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Timothy Harris and has been described as critical as the government continues to roll out income relief support for persons who became redundant and are still unemployed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The information is also described as necessary to facilitate severance payments from the government. On the most recent edition of Leadership Matters, Dr. Harris said all workers should double-check that management is living up to its responsibilities.
I want to remind employees too that they need not wait until they are severed to find out that the employer was not paying. They can go to Social Security at any time and get a printout of the contributions paid on their behalf, so that they are able to verify whether or not their employer is doing good by them. I think that it will be good that people are aware of some of these employers who have a chronic record of not doing the right thing by their employees and by Social Security by complying.
On a similar note, the Prime Minister called on employers who are deducting Social Security contributions from their employees' wages or salaries to meet the requirements of the law.
And every employer must be responsible, and every employer should do the honest thing. Having deducted the employee's contribution, you should ensure you at least deposit that with the Social Security, because the employer should be matching the deduction, I think, of 5% for Social Security. Even if you have a difficulty with your 5, at least the 5 that you took out of the employee's pay, you should pay that into the Social Security. And we would want everyone to be disciplined and to be honest enough to do that.
Dr. Harris said everyone must have a level of personal responsibility and to ensure that they are each doing what should be done. The winners of the Alliance Francaise virtual French singing competition have been announced. According to a release issued on Friday, the finale was held on Wednesday via Zoom with an average audience of 200 persons. In the children's category, all of the participants were presented a prize. They are Widson Rosame, Jadicia Percival, and Clevancia Richardson. In the adolescent category, the first place position went to Joliva Rosame with 81.4 points. Second place to Chenwa Gilbert with 71.8 points. And third place went to Tayshawn Phillips, 65 points. And in the adult category, first place went to Romain Michel Basile with 81.8 points. Second place to Lufkin Foster with 79.8 points. And third place went to Siobhan Richards with 75.8 points. The competition was introduced by Shauna Lake, Honorary Consul of France in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, as it was also the celebration of the French National Day, Bastille Day. Her remarks were followed by brief remarks from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Mr. William Vincent Hodge. We now move to news on the regional scene. Consultations are underway in Grenada to establish a sex offenders registry. Stakeholders recently met on invitation by the Ministry of Social Development and Housing to discuss the way forward with the sex offenders registry. More in this report from GB News.
Over the last couple of months, the number of reported cases of sexual offences has been steadily increasing. During the months January 2020 to July 2021, 38 sexual offences were completed by the court, with 23 convictions and 8 acquittals. In April of this year, 204 reports and cases were brought before the criminal assizes, of which 88 were sexual offence cases. According to Attorney General Dia Forrester, we do have a sex crime issue in Grenada that must be addressed.
We do have a sex crimes issue in Grenada, and we must tackle that issue in a direct manner. So the advent of the National Sex Offenders Registry Bill is one of the measures being used to assist with that process of tackling sex crimes in our country. The bill is aimed at deterring, punishing, and shaming rapists, pedophilias, and those others with a propensity to commit sexual crimes. The bill is also aimed at ensuring members of the public are aware of who are offenders living amongst us, so that members of the public are better able to protect themselves.
The bill forms part of the legislative agenda of the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General Chambers for 2021. This bill seeks to deter potential sex offenders from committing registerable offences and to keep the public informed of the presence of sex offenders in their communities.
A comprehensive register that is accessible only by the Commissioner of Police, and a second register that members of the public may inspect. The intended registers would be in the control and custody of the Commissioner of Police, providing the parameters for the police force to effectively monitor registered sex offenders and facilitate the Commissioner assessing the likelihood of that individual endangering their community and people with whom they interact with frequently.
Minister for Social Development and Housing, Delma Thomas, addressed the issue.
We have a responsibility. The responsibility is not only with the Ministry of Social Development, the SVU, and the police force. When you commit sexual offense on children, you are killing them. You are really killing them. You're destroying them for life.
Legal Affairs Minister Kendra Maturin Stewart explained that under the bill, registered offenders will be required to report to the police station once every 6 months. Failure to adhere can result to a fine of $10,000 and/or 2 years imprisonment. Failure to comply with reporting to the police station every 6 months is a summary offense, punishable by $5,000 or 12 months behind bars. Christina John, GBN News.
In St. Lucia, veteran journalist and political commentator Earl Bousquet is reminding the electorate that nomination day is the day when they will know for certain which seats a party will be contesting and also who will be running independently, suggesting that there may be some surprises on Friday when nomination day takes place. Here's more.
What we have with the independent candidates,
like other political commentators, veteran journalist Earl Bousquet has maintained that this election cycle would be one like no other. For the first time, the election is taking place during a pandemic. But there are other peculiarities of this election season, as with the case of the two independent candidates, who he says are generating more of a buzz than the two main political parties.
What we have with the independent candidates lineup this year is that it is attracting more attention than the candidates for the teams or the parties, from the standpoint that there are two very interesting independent candidates this time around: former Prime Minister Stephenson King and former UWP Cabinet Minister Richard Frederick. And one of the other new factors that has never happened before in any election in St. Lucia is that the major opposition party has entered into a strategic alliance with at least two independent candidates by not fielding any candidates in those two seats that the two candidates have overwhelming chances of possibly winning and would probably have defeated SLP candidates anyway.
Until Friday, nomination day, Bousquet explains the electorate will not know for certain who will run each seat.
It is only until Friday we will know whether any other MPs, outgoing MPs in the United Workers' Party will take and follow the advice and the invitation of Stephenson King to follow his footsteps and to resign and contest as independent candidates. It's very possible, for example, that King could decide to widen his umbrella beyond his constituency boundaries and invite any and every other candidate, whether from UWP or elsewhere, who may want to join him by standing alone for the election, to be in a position to be the proverbial kingmakers after the election.
Apart from the independent candidates, the UWP has presented a full slate of 17 candidates, the SLP 15 and the NGP 9 to contest the July 26 elections. For the DBS News World, I am Zane Romulus.
Internationally, the death toll in Germany mounts, and many are still missing as severe flooding devastates towns and villages. Germany is experiencing its worst weather disaster in decades. Al Jazeera's Step Vasson reports.
This is what residents in storm-battered parts of Germany woke up to, as record rainfall caused major rivers to burst their banks. A view from the air showing the full extent of the devastation. In the states of Rhineland-Palatinate and North Rhine-Westphalia,
Oh my God!
cars were tossed around like toys in the rising waters.
Oh no!
Homes and businesses washed away. As the flooding in some areas recedes, the death toll rises, with several people still missing. Rescue efforts are on the way to bring the stranded to safety. In villages cut off by floodwater and landslides, helicopters pluck people from their rooftops.
What you see here now is worse than after a bombing raid, and this is guaranteed to take 10 years. The people are all broke, the businesses have been hurt, so it's just horrible now.
On a visit to the United States, the German Chancellor promised to do everything possible to help.
These are terrible days for people in flooded areas. My thoughts are with you, and you can trust that all forces of our government, federal, regional and community, will do everything in difficult conditions to save lives, alleviate dangers and relieve distress.
Over the border in neighboring Belgium, floodwaters ripped through villages, submerging homes.
Around midnight, I heard a scary noise. I looked through the window and I saw that there was a torrent of water, at least 50 to 60 centimeters deep.
And in the Netherlands, several care homes were evacuated, with some local residents driven by tractor to safety.
People here have really been taken by surprise. They've never seen so much water inundating their cities and driving them away from their homes. Extreme wet weather has been paralyzing large parts of this border region here between Belgium, Germany and the Netherlands.
More torrential rain is forecast, and with it, fears of further devastation. It's been called a once-in-a-generation flood, and it isn't over yet. Stepfassen, Al Jazeera.
And now for the weather. Present weather is cloudy skies with a moderate breeze of 15 miles per hour from the east. The temperature is 31 degrees Celsius or 88 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are moderate with waves of 3 to 5 feet. The weather forecast for today will be partly sunny with a 30% or low chance of showers, and tonight partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 6:49 p.m., sunrise tomorrow at 5:45 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.